You ever imagined walking into your own business in disguise, only to discover that everything you built is hanging by a thread? Well, that's exactly what happened to Michael Carter. He didn't go there to eat. He went to listen, and what he heard almost made him drop his sandwich. Two cashiers, laughing behind an elderly employee's back, were plotting something disgusting. People like that don't work, they infiltrate. What they didn't know? That the regular customer sitting at table 4 was actually the owner of everything. This is one of those stories that turns your stomach and opens your eyes. Because what happened in that restaurant goes against everything we expect from a healthy workplace. And the best part, it proves that the truth, no matter how hidden, always finds a crack to slip through. In a world where so many people go unnoticed, this story reveals the true value of those who work in silence and the price of underestimating the heart of a just man. Get ready, because this twist will shake your soul. Michael Carter was the kind of man most people pictured sitting in an office, making decisions based on charts and reports. But numbers don't always tell the whole story, and that's exactly what set off his internal alarm. Carter's diner, his pride and legacy, was losing its spark. Employees were quitting, profits were plummeting, and there was a strange tension in the air. Michael felt something wasn't right. So instead of holding a meeting, he chose a mission: to go undercover as an ordinary customer and find out the truth for himself. A good leader, after all, doesn't just lead from the top. Dressed in simple clothes and a cap to hide his face, Michael walked into his own restaurant as if it were his first time. And what he saw wasn't exactly what he expected. The atmosphere felt heavy, the staff's smiles were forced, and a cloud of discouragement lingered in the room. Instead of asking for special treatment, he ordered a burger, plain, without fuss. As he observed, he listened to conversations, watched body language, and connected the dots. Anyone who's worked with people knows. A team's behavior always reveals what the system is trying to hide. This kind of move might seem extreme to some, but it's exactly the kind of action that separates ordinary leaders from transformational ones. Michael didn't need that visit. He had money, status, and a management team. But he wanted more than profit. He wanted to protect the essence of the stories that made that place special. Sometimes, you have to step down from the pedestal and return to the counter where it all began. Because it's there, among the scent of fresh coffee and plates spinning on trays, that hidden truths begin to reveal themselves. Henry wasn't the kind of man who drew attention. He didn't wear a tie or have diplomas hanging on the wall. He wore only a worn apron, a shy smile, and the eyes of someone who had seen a lot in life. Over 70 years old, there he was every day, washing dishes at Carter's diner as if tending to a garden. Quiet, yes, but never indifferent. There was wisdom in his way of being, and anyone paying attention would see that he wasn't just a dishwasher. He was the beating heart of that restaurant. One of those characters who give soul to stories and ask for nothing in return. While some walked past him without even noticing his presence, Henry was doing something few paid attention to. He was helping. Not with fanfare, not expecting applause. When he saw a customer who couldn't afford a meal, he found a way to cover it. He took part of his already tight paycheck and paid in silence. Like someone who understands that kindness is more than just a nice gesture. It's a commitment to humanity. Imagine that in your daily life. How often do we pass by people like Henry without even saying thank you? These stories of humility are like beacons in a world used to noise. It's not hard to see how people like him shape the places they go. Henry carried a rare kind of dignity on his shoulders, the kind you can't buy or build overnight. He showed, through his actions, that it's not the title that defines someone's worth, but the intention with which they live. And maybe that's why, in that tired and unmotivated environment, his presence stood out like a cool breeze on a hot day. Michael, still undercover, began to pay attention, and something about Henry started to change everything inside him. Henry didn't talk much about his past, but his eyes carried scars that words couldn't hide. Anyone seeing him patiently washing dishes might never imagine the depth of his stories. He had lost his wife to cancer, the great love of his life, his partner in journeys, dreams, and silences. To try and save her, he sold everything he owned: house, car, memories. Not out of heroism, but out of love. And when the treatment failed, he was left with emptiness and an old trailer as his home, parked on the outskirts of the city. Even in the face of pain, Henry never let suffering make him bitter. On the contrary, he chose to keep giving, not because he had extra, but because he knew the value of a gesture when everything feels like it's falling apart. Every month, part of his paycheck went to the hospital where his wife was treated. He said it was a way of saying thank you, even without having had the ending he hoped for. That teaches us something precious. Sometimes, we can't change the outcome of a story, but we can still honor the journey. Want a practical example? Instead of holding on to resentment, you can write a letter of gratitude to someone who stood by you during hard times. That changes everything. And even with all those hardships, Henry never accepted help. Not out of blind pride, but because of a kind of dignity many have forgotten. He believed that as long as he could work, he didn't need to depend on anyone. Strange, isn't it? In today's world, where so many seek shortcuts, here was a man fighting to keep contributing. These are the stories that break patterns, that make us look around and reconsider. Are we valuing the right things? Michael, overhearing quiet conversations and watching gestures from afar, started putting the pieces together. The truth, no matter how hard people try to hide it, always finds a crack to escape through. Michael, still silent, began noticing something strange near the register. Megan and Troy, two young employees, laughed between whispers, exchanging suspicious glances and rehearsed gestures. Everything seemed innocent until it didn't. They spoke about Henry with disdain, mocked his age, and called him dead weight. But there was something worse. They were plotting something dirty. They wanted to frame him for discrepancies in the register and get him fired. Not out of necessity, but pure convenience. Some stories reveal the best in people, others, the worst. Fortunately, this is more common than one might think. People who feel threatened by those who are different, whether due to kindness, experience, or integrity, often try to sabotage them. It's the old game of clipping the wings of those who fly too high for the taste of those who prefer to crawl. Megan and Troy wanted Henry out of the way to secure more hours, more control, maybe even an easy promotion. Using someone's goodness as a stepping stone is a form of cruelty disguised as ambition. And if you've ever seen this happen at your job, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the kind of story that ties your stomach in knots. Michael, seeing it all unfold, couldn't stay silent anymore. But he knew that an impulsive reaction could end badly. So he used his intelligence, installed discreet cameras, started recording conversations, took note of schedules, details, and statements. He knew he had to prove the truth, not just defend it with words. And that's when we learn something valuable. Not all justice is achieved by shouting. Sometimes, patience and strategy are what reveal who's truly in the right. And the stage for that revelation was already being set. The day came when the masks would fall. Megan and Troy, confident their plan would go off without a hitch, decided to act. They fabricated a supposed discrepancy in the register, set the stage, and pointed the finger directly at Henry. They claimed the missing money could only be his fault. After all, who would pay attention to an elderly dishwasher? But what they didn't know was that the game had already changed. Michael, with the recordings in hand and the truth in his pocket, interrupted the show. It was time to flip the script of this story. When he revealed his true identity, the shock was widespread. The looks of disdain turned into embarrassment and panic. Michael not only showed who he was, but also presented the videos, the conversations, the malicious laughter, the dirty plans. There was no denying it anymore. Henry's expression amidst the chaos was a mix of surprise and relief. For the first time in a long while, someone was there not just to hear him, but to defend him. That teaches us something powerful. Justice isn't just about punishing the wicked. It's also about uplifting the good and giving voice to stories that have been silenced for far too long. The consequences came swiftly and precisely. Megan and Troy were fired that very day. And more than that, Michael made a point of apologizing to Henry in front of everyone. Because acknowledging your mistake is also a form of leadership. Who hasn't secretly wished someone would notice what you do in silence? That someone would see your struggles, your sacrifices, your truth? Henry finally had that moment. And what Michael did next would change not only his life, but the entire structure of Carter's Diner. It was there, among stacked dishes and lingering shocked stares, that Michael made a decision that would change everything. He pulled Henry aside, looked him in the eyes, and did the unexpected, offered him the position of floor manager. Yes, The man who had washed dishes in anonymity for years would now have the chance to lead with the same heart that had served so many in silence. And more than that, Michael paid off all of Henry's debts and handed him the keys to a modest yet comfortable home. A fresh start, worthy of someone who had built his story with humility, courage, and truth. His actions aren't just gestures of kindness, they are acts of restoration. And Michael knew that. He went beyond a reward and implemented deep changes in the restaurant. He established fair wages, created an emergency assistance fund for employees in need, and fostered a culture of mutual respect. Henry was the first to benefit, but the transformation was collective. This shows that to lead is often to correct what once went unnoticed. If you lead a team, a family, or even a small group, ask yourself, am I valuing the right people for the right reasons? Henry, even without expecting it, became the symbol of this new chapter. With his calm demeanor and the gaze of someone who has seen a lot in life, he became a mentor to the new employees, welcoming them with patience and teaching by example. The impact was immediate. Customers began to notice a difference in service. Employees started working with greater purpose, and for the first time in months, Carter's Diner breathed new air. All because someone finally stopped to listen to the right stories. But what would come next would show that Henry's legacy would go far beyond the walls of that restaurant. Time passed, and what was once just an ordinary diner became a true refuge of humanity. Henry, now the floor manager, didn't just organize shifts or supervise tables. He was the invisible link between the past and the present, between what Carter's Diner used to be and what it had become. His stories, once hidden between the lines of silence, were now shared in conversations with young employees and even customers. He didn't speak much, but every word he said carried a weight of experience that made people stop and listen. And the most beautiful part? The restaurant's culture changed. Inspired by Henry, the staff began to help each other more. One gave someone a ride home, another shared their lunch with someone who forgot theirs, and even small gestures, like leaving notes of encouragement on the breakroom bulletin board, became common. Carter's Diner became news in the city, not for its dishes, but for the people who worked there. Stories of resilience, compassion, and dignity began to intertwine, turning that place into a living stage of transformation. What once seemed like just a job became a school of character. Michael, watching all this unfold, understood the true value of his mission. It wasn't about profit, it wasn't about status, it was about legacy. And legacies, unlike inheritances, aren't handed over ready-made. They are built, day by day, with actions that speak louder than words. Henry became the living reminder that the world still needs quiet heroes. People who do good even when no one is watching. And it's exactly this kind of person that can change the course of an entire story, like lighting a candle in total darkness. Now tell me, how many times have you ignored someone like Henry? How many incredible stories pass by us in silence, while we pretend we're too busy to notice? Maybe it's time to change that. Maybe it's time to stop looking only upward and start paying attention to those beside us. Because it's these people, the unseen, the unappreciated, who carry the greatest treasures of character, loyalty, and truth. So what would you do in Michael's place? Would you have the courage to go undercover just to hear what no one says to your face? Or even more, would you have the courage to make things right, even when it's easier to just let it slide? Think about it. These stories are meant to open your eyes and your heart. And if this one stirred something in you, maybe it's time to rewrite your own. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? If this story touched you, if any part of it resonated with you, then subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and join us as we uncover more stories that change lives and might just change yours too.